everyone, this is Riccardo Mazzini and this is Vlog. Now, this is a vlog about a new game. So new that this is just a preview for a Kickstarter, for an ongoing Kickstarter. And the game is Khalkhin Gold by Princeps Games. This game is live on Kickstarter now. You will find the link in the description. And I want to thank the friends of Princeps Games that sent me this preview copy. This is a prototype copy, so as usual, all the graphics, all the components you will see are not to be considered final, but they are quite close to what you will get in the final product. Some things may change. I think that 80% or more of the rulebook is finalized, so this is just a matter of calibrating the scenario. And well, in this video we will start from the components, and most of all we will focus on the differences between this and the other great game in the series, the first game in the series, that was Freezing Inferno. Freezing Inferno was about the invasion of Finland. This one is about the Battle of Khalkhin Gold, a battle against the Japanese Kwantung Army and the Soviet Red Army. The situation was that the Japanese Kwantung Army was busy conquering China, so busy that it touched Mongolia, and this is the border with Mongolia, and the Mongol government at the time was pro-Soviet, was backed by the Soviet Union, and there were many border clashes. The Kwantung Army was essentially independent from the government. I advise you to hear the great podcast Supernova in the East, that really, especially in this very early part of the Japanese expansion in China, is very thorough, very complete, and gives you a perfect description of what was happening there. Essentially, the Kwantung Army, that is a branch of the Japanese army that was busy conquering China, was occupied in conquering China, was independent from the government. So when there were border clashes against the Soviets, well, the Kwantung Army said, okay, we can deal with those Reds, with those communists, and let's go on and let's throw them away. It didn't work. Really, it didn't work. There were border clashes, border incidents, and the Red Army was a bit surprised by Japanese actions, but not so much. When the situation escalated, the Soviet Red Army quickly recovered from the early phases, and then proceeded and gave a very far defeat to the Japanese, especially because at the head of the Soviet army in the area, the Soviet Red Army, was a guy named Zhukov, and we will know that name from World War II. We are in 39. This is summer of 39, and Zhukov really had his first test as a field commander. He had his first important test, and he passed it without any problems. It was a tough battle, but in the end the Soviet Red Army was essentially victorious, and the Japanese understood that, well, the Soviets were not so easy adversaries. So when later World War II came, yeah, they were not so happy in attacking the Soviets. So this is a very important battle, actually, even if it is almost a forgotten battle. Anyway, this situation, this full historical setting, okay, not even a description. The situation, the tactical situation, you have a river here, you have the Soviets on this side, Japanese on the other, and then it is a big sweeping war of maneuver. Freezing Inferno in Finland was at a larger scale. You had the entire Finland. This is just a plain, yes, with mountains, with rivers, with forests, and so on. But this means that you will have attack and counterattack continuously everywhere. This is almost a textbook situation, and it is very interesting for a wargamer. So now we will examine the components of this game. As I said, the scenario has to be calibrated and fully finalized. So we will deal with the components and some of the main rules, especially those that are different from Freezing Inferno. And also, I hope that this gives you a good idea of the game and makes you understand if the Kickstarter is for you. Actually, so this game is for you. I like the game. I really love Freezing Inferno, and personally I backed also Khalkhin Gold. So for me it is for this very interesting situation, and also for the relevant changes that have been made for the scale, for the size of the simulation, and also for the situation, the attack and counter-attack situation. Also for the great components. These are prototype components, but they're fantastic. These are 2 mounted maps, not one but 2 mounted maps, and they look nice. And also the other components are really up to the standards of Freezing Inferno. So this is the map, this is the components. Let's get a bit deeper with Khalkhin Gold. Alright, now let's familiarize a bit more with the material components of the game, which are absolutely top-notch, as it was as it happened in Freezing Inferno. We already said maps, double mounted map, and has a double face, and the other face there is the same map with a more of a war game look. You can find the images around, but these are pre-production copies, so the graphics can change. And also with the tracks, with the production points, with the tours, just the same stuff as in Freezing Inferno. But also after the map, the counters. And also these are quite familiar to those who already played the Freezing Inferno. You have stacks, units composed by a stack of similar counters, and there are no big news here, except you see artillery, you see armor units, you see cavalry. It's Mongolia after all, and you see infantry, etc. But you also see, and this is new, an HQ, a number HQ. Why? Because in this game, HQs are not the same as in Freezing Inferno. They're not identical to each other. They're quite different, and we are going to see in a moment why. Oh, on the map you see the objectives. Of course, you have to capture those supply points, supply cities. It's almost, as I said, a textbook situation. There's a bit of a feeling of a red versus blue situation, but it was real, and it is not at all symmetrical. After that, the other components, well, after that, cards, so many cards, event cards, and we already know them from Inferno, from Freezing Inferno. Essentially, one per turn, you draw one of these per turn, and this gives a special event regarding that particular phase of the battle, and there are 3 cards for each turn. So this your game essentials may be quite different. Other cards, these are decks, and we will see in a bit more detail here the air combat system. These are the cards, these 4 piles are the cards pertaining to the air combat system. I will not delve too much into detail in that system, because there is a very good tutorial in the Kickstarter page, and so I'm going to refer to that tutorial. It is useless for me to repeat once again what is inside that tutorial, but I will let you see essentially what you can do with the air combat system and why it is changed so much from Freezing Inferno. And these are other type of cards which are very interesting. These are general cards. As I told you, the HQs are not at all the same HQ. You see, these are the historical commanders. Some of the pictures are blank. Probably they will be filled in the final production copy with other historical commanders, but all of those commanders have a specialty. They are a bit better in infantry, some of them are good or not in infantry, some are especially in tanks, some in artillery. What does it mean is that before the game begins, you choose your generals, and you can choose them inside a certain value. So you can have a very good general infantry or a not so good general with armor, and a not so good armor general, or you can have more balanced general, artillery, armor, and infantry. It is up to you, but this will change so much your approach. You are a bit like a general staff commander. Imagine you like that and say, okay, what general will we send here? Is it good or is it not? So you have to balance your generals. This of course for the Japanese as well as for the Soviets, and this gives other variability to the scenario. And also, last but not least, something that the Freezing Inferno players will recognize: minimaps for the setups. This is the Soviet setup, this is the Japanese setup, because one side of the river, other side of the river, once again, red versus blue. This is blind, oops, it is essentially, oops, this, okay. You see, this line is framed in this one. So you trace here the positions of your units before the game, and it is double blind, so you don't know where the opponent will place these units, his or her units, and there are also some hidden units. Very interesting. Once again, great variables. Now, and after that, on the purely material side of things or components, pair 8 charts for additional modules for the air combat system, and these ones will be quite familiar to Freezing Inferno players, especially is the combat result table, sequence of play, and other modules table. And after that, you will also have wow, okay, ta-da, the great inner boxes, compartments for the game box, where you will be able to store your units inside a big box. Okay, this is just a pre-production copy, but as you see, it is quite finalized as well. So these are the components. Now let's see the game. Alright, now the great novelty of this system, that is the air combat system. The air combat system is a lot more abstracted than what happened in Freezing Inferno. Freezing Inferno, especially, you had air units were not so different than other units. Yes, they had their own tables, your interception rules, and they had their ranges. You had to, it was very interesting, you had to capture an airport, an airfield, not just because it gave you some abstract victory points, no, because if you conquered, if you occupied that airfield, you could extend the range of your bomber attacks, for example, or your fighter cover. Now, here in Khalkhin Gold, the scale is completely, the size of the dimension is completely different, so it would have no sense to have a similar system here, because at this scale the planes start from an airbase off the side of the map and can easily reach targets far beyond the other side of the map. This is not the kind of system that can be simulated. This is not the kind of situation that can be directly simulated on the map. Here, essentially, planes can strike wherever they want, if and only if they get superiority for that turn. And here is this, I would like to call that something of a mini game, a game within a game. It is a bit abstracted, but it's very interesting. At the beginning of the turn, the two players must decide who has the air superiority. As you see there, Here the haircuts show the base strength. There is an indicator marker that goes up and down here on this line and says, okay, it's level 5, you have maximum capacity of 25, for example. And you have this level of fighters, this level of bombers, and this level of anti-aircraft guns. At the beginning of the turn, the two players secretly choose one of these cards that are the air combat cards, 0 to 8, and it is very important that they do not refresh these cards. So if you play on turn 1 card 8 is gone. Okay, so there is a bluff and counter bluff. These cards essentially decide which row is used. Let's say, for example, the Soviet player with the 14 strength points in fighters uses a 6 card. So okay, 6 cards means that with 14 he has 8 points for his superiority. The Japanese players really wants, he doesn't care. He uses 2 cards with 14 you see, here it is, 4. So the Soviet player has the superiority for that turn. You can of course play only once per game. You can play an additional, after seeing the result, an additional card to further modify it, bluff with your bluff. You have also some optional special effect cards, but essentially this is the system to determine who has the superiority. Where the superiority can do 3 things. First of all, you can use that superiority to have a +1 bonus on a single engagement, or a single tactical engagement. He can use, the second thing, he can use that superiority to strike at the enemy base. This is very interesting, and by striking at the enemy base, and you have opposite rolls on this table, if the attacker obtains a better result, well, the airbase strength of the enemy will get lower. Or third thing, the player with the air superiority can strike at the supply lines of the enemy and lower his political points. Just imagine some long-range bombing against railroads, for example, moving supply to the units at the front. So once again, I refer you to the great tutorial you will see in the page, because it is much more detailed than this, but this is the general idea. This is the superiority system. Yes, it is a bit abstracted, it had to be, but it is fairly more detailed, and there's also a game within a game, even more than much more complex games. And so I really like this approach, and this is a very peculiar feature of this game. Now a very brief, very short refresh for the combat system of this game, which is essentially the same as in Freezing Inferno. There are some modifiers, different modifiers, of course, as we said, the bonus from the generals, etc. But that bonus means that you cannot do less than a certain value. Okay. After that, the combat system is absolutely the same as in Freezing Inferno. A bit of a refresh here. You have the combat value of these Japanese infantry unit. As I said, units are in stacks. These are 3 counters. This means 3 steps. 2 plus 3 means 5. Against a defense of the Soviet unit that is 3, starting with 3, 1, 2, 3, 6, 5 against 6, and you use this table, and you look for 5 against 6. So easy. And so you see you have to use this column. You roll a die, and you see the result that is quite differentiated. Retreats, voluntary retreats, different step losses, units that are disabled from the title, etc. The die, as we said, the die there is a very normal die, but there are also average dies that exclude the extreme results, so they give more importance to the actual proportions, the actual force ratios on the field, if you feel so inclined. Of course, you have to choose a single specific type of die before the beginning of the gaming session and use that for the entire session. There are different modifiers, as we said, commanders and so on, but essentially this is the combat system, and it worked really well in Freezing Inferno, and it works really well even here. Very simple, but it's very nuanced and very detailed. One of the real strengths of this system. Last but not least, optional modules, and there were in many in Freezing Inferno. There will be also here in Khalkhin Gold. Essentially, this modem is about espionage and deception. You have to spend some political points, production points, to reach to activate this specific skill, and then after it has been activated, you just restart everything. Espionage gives you a reroll. Deception makes it possible to withdraw before an enemy attack. And as you can see, okay, sorry for the glare once again, they are essentially asymmetrical. So the Soviet player will activate his espionage skill much sooner than the Japanese player, but the Japanese player will be much better at deception. The Japanese player, he or she, will be much more flexible on the tactical level. Another interesting nuance. And another module, of course, is the solo module. The solo module is not complete now. It is being finalized during the game design process, but there will be a solo module. I think it will be a bit similar, than, with all due differences, than the one used by Freezing Inferno, and that module will let you play this game solo as Freezing Inferno. These are the optional modules that are an integral part of the game. And now let's get to the conclusions. Alright, so here we are with my conclusions about this game. This game is in Kickstarter. You will find a link in the description. This is just a preview copy, blah blah blah. You already know that if you have managed to reach this point of the video. What do I think of the entire system? Now, of course, this still needs a bit of finalization or calibration, but it is built upon the original Freezing Inferno system, which is very good, which is very solid. I know that system. I played many times. I really like that system, and it shows. On top of that, there is another layer. There are some other layers. There are the generals, for example. There is the great air combat system. There are small things here and there. There are the hidden units. There are the units of the generals. There are different objectives. But in essence, this is Freezing Inferno with some more rules, but in a totally different situation. You don't have the entire Finland. It is not a strategic game, so you won't have sieges for specific key points, passages, etc., and natural obstacles. Yes, you have those natural obstacles, but they can be passed over, and you have a really asymmetrical and at the same time symmetrical situation, and so you have a great plane where it is almost a textbook situation. I see this game to be used in academic situations, in academic environments, or even training, professional training environments, to teach students about principles like concentration of force, how to maintain the offensive push, selecting your objectives, and then you have a situation where you will be attacking on one side and defending on the other. You'll have to prioritize your resources, deceive your opponents, etc, etc, etc. And it is very fun, it is very interesting. This is almost a textbook situation. It's a forgotten battle, but it is very, very important, because after that battle the Japanese really were not so anxious to fight the Soviets, for much of the chagrin of the Germans, who said, okay, we declare war to America and you declare war to the Soviet Union, and you strike the Soviets from behind, you dear Japanese allies. Not at all, this did not happen. And in part it is also thanks to Khalkhin Gold. It's almost a bit of a complex, psychological complex situation after Khalkhin Gold. Why? But it's not psychological, because the Japanese understood that the Soviet Red Army was a very tough opponent for them. Anyway, this is a very fun game. This is light. It's a light game, and not so more complicated than Freezing Inferno. This is still a good war game to start. It is not short because there are so many things to do, so much terrain to cover, but it works, it flows really well, and is very nice, it's very fun. It is very different every time you play it. You have blind setup, so the stuff will be different each time. You have the general cards, you have the event cards, and also you have the air combat system, which looks fairly complicated, and you think, well, it is a bit too much time spent on this just for a +1 here and there, or a strike against the supply lines on the enemy, or inside the system itself to lower the air strength of the enemy. But those small advantages can give you a real advantage, a real strategic advantage, real operational advantage in the end, that can be quite relevant for the final outcome. So this system, it is not so elaborated, the air combat system. After a while it gets fairly intuitive, but it is also not a layer. You see, layer upon layer upon layer. Other layers, the modules, well, the additional modules, that they're not so complicated after the first place. You're gonna add them, and they add something even more. The generals, a good infantry general means that you cannot have a very good armor general. So this, you build your strategy before the game. This is a game that I see people preparing in advance, weeks in advance of a gaming session. Say, okay, there are small paper pads. Okay, I will stop here, and here I will give this portion to my great infantry commander, and so on and so on and so on. So the game is very nice, it's very fun, and it's still quite light, as Freezing Inferno components are. You see those components, these are pre-production components, so I really am anxious to see the final components. There will be a solo module as well. So this is a game meant to be played, and about a sudden covered battle, a very interesting proposal. I did not explain in detail the air combat system. There is a great air combat system tutorial in the Kickstarter page. This is just an introduction. Go see that, and go also see the other links and other videos about this game, so you will be able to see if this game is for you. This was the purpose of my videos. This was just an introduction, an explanation of the things that are different from Freezing Inferno. I hope that this video has been useful to you. This is a nice game, so decide if this is a game for you. I think that if you have Freezing Inferno and you like the Freezing Inferno, you will love this game. Personally, I really like Freezing Inferno, and I love this game so much that I also pledged a copy in the Kickstarter campaign, because I want to have the final version of the game. But in the end, it's up to you. I hope that this video has been useful to you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having been here. And as always, thanks, take care, and don't be scared. It's just war games. Ciao.